Hello, Reddy sir, how are you?
Great. How are you, sir?
Fine. Should we start? I think students have joined and
How you
we
say?
should start. Good morning, students. Today we have Mr. Suren Nath Reddy with us. He is a pioneer in 3D printing, a person who has uh, developed this particular concept and made it commercial. And with his efforts, he has made the 3D ING company into one of the largest manufacturers of 3D printing. And as we go for the topic, 3D printing is used basically in medical and manufacturing industries and many other socio-cultural sectors also. But primarily it is used in making jewelry, customizable gifts, products, etc. And I hope that this particular session with Mr. Reddy will be very illuminating, and he will be telling us how he developed this particular concept and how he proceeded in uh, getting this particular concept in a commercial one. So it would be a good lecture for all our engineering students. Uh, so I would like to request Mr. Reddy to please uh, start his session, and I hope this session will be very useful for our students.
Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Reddy.
I would need screen sharing permissions. Hi, I would need screen sharing permissions. Could you hear me?
Uh, Ready, sir?
Yeah. Could you give me screen sharing permissions?
Excellent.
Yeah.
1 minute, sir.
Sure. Okay.
Please share, sir. Option is enable.
Are you able to see the screen?
Ah, yes, sir. Visible. Fine, sir.
Let's get started. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Suren. I believe your director gave a quick intro. So I run this company. I've been running this for past 7 years. In fact, this is our seventh year anniversary going on this week. So I've been giving talks on 3D printing for the last 7 years, and even before that, I've been into robotics, embedded systems, electronics, IoT, some key technologies here and there. I don't know a lot about a lot of technologies, but I've been sharing whatever little knowledge I've acquired over the past. So your dean was specific on and asking share about my journey. I'll make it quick in a minute. So I started a company called Red Robotics, and back then we were facing difficulties in terms of creating parts for our own robots, so like fabricating certain shapes, etc. And making one or two parts in the injection molding or any of these manufacturing industries is very, very expensive. And being a startup guy, I didn't have that kind of budget. This was in 2013, and that's when I came across 3D printers, and I decided, I'll buy a 3D printer, explore it, and then start building robots with the machine. And that's how I got a 3D printer. That's how I got introduced to 3D printing. And as it went ahead, I realized that there's a huge potential in this particular industry, but there was no supply. At least in India, there was nobody who was supplying or manufacturing 3D printers or even 3D printing as a service. So back then, I decided to just start 3Ding as a small blog, and it started getting a lot of traffic, and people started asking me 3D print this, 3D print that, and that's how I made this into a commercial aspect. Over the course of a few years, we moved on into manufacturing our own 3D printers. I have a line set up in, okay, somebody's scribbling on my screen. Yes, so we have a line of 3D printing, manufacturing 3D printers set up in Chennai. So we've been shipping out machines for the last 5 to 6 years. We are the largest manufacturer of 3D printers in India. So at any point of time, if you have any questions, feel free to hit on the chat and hit me up with questions. I'll be free to answer your questions. So today's agenda is mostly around applications of 3D printing. I'll touch a few concepts. I've put up certain concepts around product design, rapid prototyping. Probably a few seconds in each would make it around half an hour easily. So apart from these, if you have questions, you can feel free to hit me up on the chat, and probably I'll just Google some images and give you some explanations around it. Yeah. So before we go into what that is, could you, Mr. Rehan, could you clear these lines? I'm not sure if somebody has scribbled on them.
Yes, sir.
All right, while he's at it, thank you. While he's at it, if you're on the chat, could you just hit me up with what you know about 3D printing? Or chat is disabled, is it?
Enable, sir. Sir, please.
Great, thank you. So is there anyone who knows what 3D printing is? I would like to keep this question open for a few seconds. You can just hit me up. I'll see how many of you get it right, and from there I'll take it forward. Rapid prototyping technique. Okay. Anyone else? So rapid prototyping is more of one application of 3D printing. Could you be more specific on a much broader aspect what 3D printing is? Physically printing a CAD model slice by slice. Okay, Akhil, great. Anyone else? So feel free to hit me up with the answers. There's nothing right or wrong over here. Additive manufacturing technique, great. So while we keep listening to these answers, I'll just go ahead and explain, what they mean and how correct or wrong, or how I can change your perspective. Somebody said it's an additive manufacturing technique. So 3D printing is actually a very simplified term used for additive manufacturing, because we don't want the common man to use a very complicated term like additive manufacturing. Okay, for us engineers, maybe it makes sense to use complex terms, but for the common man, it has to be something very simple, and that's what 3D printing means. Okay, 3D printing is more of a synonym for additive manufacturing. Okay, 3D printing or additive manufacturing is a construction of three-dimensional object from a CAD model or a digital 3D. Okay, somebody has given Wikipedia explanation, great. 3D printing is an imagination of real view. So I'll go ahead and give you a very, easy answer. It is just another manufacturing technique. Okay, whatever answers you have mentioned are all correct, but on a very simple or on a very broad idea, it's just another manufacturing technique. Okay. Meanwhile, could you hit me up with other manufacturing techniques? Right. For example, I have some part we've just 3D printed over here. We just pulled it off from one of my machines just before class starting this. This is more like, a robotic arm, probably like Iron Man's or something. You can see it on my video. Something like this can be manufactured with n number of technologies and not just 3D printing, right? So what other manufacturing techniques have you heard of? For example, I have something like, I have my mouse on my desktop. I'm pretty sure that the mouse was not 3D printed. This is manufactured by Logitech. Logitech did not 3D print this mouse. They made it with some other manufacturing technique and then they sold it to. Techniques like molding, casting, milling, machining. Okay, great. Nidesh, Vishal, all correct answers. Now, if they are already existing, okay, if we can manufacture something this accurate, like whatever I have over here, this one I would say is very accurate, okay, in terms of precision or manufacturing, etc. Why do we need another technique like 3D printing? What are the drawbacks over here, or why specifically a completely modern technology like 3D printing? While you answer for those questions, for that particular question, why 3D printing, like your friends have told me, there's injection molding, there's casting, there's forming, there's CNC. I'm not going into details of these particular specifications of these particular technologies. Can we use metal in 3D printing? Yes, Abhishek, we can. So while these methods are available, why exactly do we need 3D printing? In 3D printing, cost of few products is very less as compared to other process. Okay, that is one answer I would say is partially true. Detailed preparations are required for traditional methods, partially true. Like preparing casts, totally acceptable. Anyone else has any answers? Right. It allows us to control microstructure of design. Okay, partially acceptable. I'll answer those. Troubleshooting problems. Not really. So here's one graph that I have. They are all mass manufacturing techniques. Exactly. Vishal, I would say that is the most accurate answer. All these methods probably are all designed to manufacture in much larger quantities. So if you look at this particular graph, so what the graph demonstrates or shows is two particular lines. So one of them, which is the blue line falling from yellow to a blue circle, the other one from the green circle to the blue circle. Okay, the blue colored line is basically costs of manufacturing an item on an average with respect to quantity. So which means that when the quantity is very low, the cost of manufacturing some item is extremely high. And then as it keeps, as the quantity keeps increasing, the cost drops drastically. Right? Why this happens is, for example, we're talking about the same mouse that I have. I'm just opening up one part of the mouse, this particular structure, which is the dome of the mouse. Something like this, for example, the whole mouse sells at few hundreds in the market, few hundred rupees. To manufacture some part like this should not cost the manufacturer more than a few rupees. And to achieve, a 5 rupees or 10 rupees per item of this size, they should be manufacturing in multiple millions. Okay, when you manufacture only one item of this, when you've invested into a mold or a die or a cast, what happens is the die's cost is very high, like a few lakhs for just this part. Okay, so making one piece out of an injection molding is very, very expensive. But again, the moment you start manufacturing in millions, the per piece cost of this drops into a few rupees. That's like a drastical drop. Okay, that's what you see in the graph on the top, where low quantity manufacturing is very expensive, but as it keeps going, it drops to rupees 10 or something. This is just an average price of a random object. But the same thing, if you see with 3D printing, the cost is actually flat. Okay, it starts at 44, 43, 42. It doesn't really go down as the quantity increases, right? So this chart is the key to understand whether someone should choose 3D printing or not. So let's say you're trying to manufacture some item in a few pieces or a few tens or even a few hundreds. Manufacturing techniques like 3D printing or additive techniques make sense. But then as you start going into few thousands or few millions of units, it's always best to go for conventional methods due to cost, due to speed, etc. Right? So this is the key, and this is why people go for 3D printing. So if your quantity is cheaper, quantity is lower, then 3D printing makes a lot of sense. For example, the same part that I'm holding right now, the dome of a mouse, if I were to 3D print it, it would cost a few hundreds, right? But at a few hundreds, it's not viable to sell in the market when the whole product itself is only a few hundreds, right? So that's exactly why when you're talking about large scale quantity, you go ahead into other techniques. So I'm stressing on this particular slide because this is exactly why this is what a lot of customers often ask us: when should we go for 3D printing? When should we not?
Sorry, screen sharing not working. Please reshare the same.
Sure. You get it?
Yes, sir, visible.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for bringing that up. So I was saying that quantity is a key factor you need to choose between going for 3D printing versus conventional methods. Okay, now that we are clear why 3D printing, let's go into some applications of 3D printing. Or even before that, some advantage here. Somebody just mentioned the process flow involved in other methods is much larger compared to 3D printing. You were right. So in conventional methods, there's so many things like you need to bend, you need to weld them, you need to grind or drill holes, etc. A lot of process involved. In additive manufacturing or in 3D printing, it's like you conceptualize a design, you go ahead and 3D print it. There's one more additional step which I haven't mentioned, where we post-process the objects. Not always the objects are strong or polished, etc. So in cases like that, what we do is we make sure that they are post-processed and then we go ahead and install. So in a matter of 3 or 4 steps, you have your final product ready. Okay, that's one key advantage. And let's go into few applications of 3D printing. Now, before I start, talking about applications, it will be great if somebody can say which industries this particular 3D printing can be used. You can hit me up on the chat. Somebody, your director was talking about medical applications. Your director was also mentioning about prototyping. Somebody else on the chat, I believe Mr. Vishal said, rapid prototyping. Is there any other industries you can think of? Just give me the industry's name alone. Like, let's say I was trying to make, parts of robots with 3D printing. So which other industries can, benefit out of 3D printing? Okay, I'm not able to see the chat for whatever reason. So I have a few applications. So one thing that I want everyone to understand is, since this is a manufacturing technique, it can be applicable across all industries wherever there is a physical product. That's the key to understanding where you can use 3D printing. If there's any physical part for whatever reason involved, 3D printing can be utilized over there. It is just a matter of whether does it make sense or not. All right. So rapid prototyping is a very great example. This is a personal example which I personally worked on. This is for a company called Pidilite. I believe you all have heard of Pidilite. Pidilite is the company that makes Fevicol. And whatever those small bottles that you're seeing are the Fevicryl bottles, which they were prototyping roughly during 2014-15. So the concept or the story went like this. When Pidilite contacted me, so they had some kind of a data. It's like every time they created a bottle or redesigned a particular product, they were undergoing almost 30 iterations on an average. 30 iterations, and each iteration costing about $1 lakh to $1.5 lakh just to get it injection molded and to see how it looks like. Okay, and also it took about 2 to 3 weeks. So if you can do the math, okay, somebody's scribbling on my screen, please undo it. Thank you. Thank you. So, you can do the math, 30 iterations into 1.5 lakhs. We're talking about 30 to 45 lakhs just for the product design, and that too not involving any R&D or anything. It's just for seeing the prototypes. And then we're talking about 30 to 40 iterations into, 2 to 3 weeks. That's again a huge investment in terms of time. And during that time, they have to pay salaries for all the designers. There's a lot of cost involved over there. And when they approached me, they asked me, can we use 3D printing to, how fast can we do it? How cheap can we do it? So by my math, I was able to, offer them at a cost of about 1,500 rupees per iteration. And then the costs, I mean, the time fell down to about a matter of 1 day just to 3D print them and then ship it. So they were in Mumbai, I was in Chennai. It was a matter of 2 to 3 days for them to get them delivered. So just by moving to outsourcing a part from injection molding to rapid prototyping, their costs fell by 100x. Okay, and their time also fell down drastically. So over the course of next 2 months, they were doing these things multiple times. Like they used to get the part and then they modify the design just to make sure it was more ergonomic or more user friendly. And then they'll go ahead and then send a slightly different version of the same design. So this became a very regular habit. And after 2 months, I called them up and told, gentlemen, you're actually wasting time by shipping from Chennai to Mumbai. Why don't you buy your 3D printer? At that time, we were talking about a 1 lakh investment. For them, it was nothing because they were investing 1 lakh in one prototype. Okay, for them, it made sense. So they got a 3D printer, they gave it to the designer, and then said, do as many iterations as you want, come up with better products. So after 2 years, when I spoke to them, they gave me very interesting statistics that they no more stuck to a 30 iteration rule. Okay, their iterations were infinite because it was a matter of few rupees or few paisa just to 3D print a part, and then because they owned the machine, they didn't have to pay any other third-party labor. It was just a matter of consumable and electricity. Okay, so they were getting it done for at least 1,000x cheaper than what they were initially spending. And since time was no more a constraint, because they don't have to wait for 2-3 weeks, it's just a matter of few hours. Once the design is ready, give it to the machine gives out the output. So they had a huge amount of innovation capital right now, right? So this is one of the best examples that I keep telling in terms of rapid prototyping. And whenever they feel that their product is good enough, they'll again go back to injection molding. They'll try it, and if it makes sense, they'll go into mass manufacturing. Right? So why I specify rapid prototyping so much is this is the most important application of 3D printing. The next part is in manufacturing. So once you have a prototype ready, the next obvious thing is, trying to manufacture it. And to manufacture something, you'll have to invest into tools, right? So over here, we're talking about two different methods where the first one, which is on the left, it's called direct rapid tooling. What we do over here is those two parts in the white, they are 3D printed. So which means that the mold is 3D printed. The tool is 3D printed directly. Okay, and then for these, you'll have to use some high temperature materials, only then it makes sense. And on the right side, whatever you're seeing is the part that is supposed to be manufactured, that is printed. Okay, the difference is that on the left side, the negative is printed. On the right side, the actual object is 3D printed. The blue colored part is 3D printed. And then with that, they make a mold. And with that mold, they make n number of pieces. So both these methods, be it direct or indirect, can be used for manufacturing a few hundred units. Let's say you have designed one particular item and you don't want to, you want to go ahead and do a pilot testing with your product with the limited beta or something like that. So you don't have to invest into an injection mold again worth a few lakhs, but rather you can 3D print and then make your own tool and then, start manufacturing maybe 100 units or 500 units. Okay, so this is the second step of manufacturing. The first step was prototyping. The second step is rapid tooling. There's alternatively another version where you can 3D print a few hundred pieces itself. It's called rapid manufacturing. Again, all fancy terms. It's just that we're manufacturing at the end. So whatever you're seeing is something we did for COVID-19. I have this on my desk right now. So the idea over here is we're working with a rural development trust over here. So they wanted to use these, snorkeling masks. I don't know if you can see me on the camera. And they want to connect these to oxygen masks so that they can be used as, protective PPEs, okay, for doctors and as well as for patients, so that the virus does not come out of into the room. It doesn't escape into the room where doctors and patients are together. So they've successfully tried this out, and we manufactured about a few hundred pieces, and they started distributing to all hospitals around it. And as of now, as we speak, they're using this as we speak. Okay. So this whole concept from design until implementation took hardly a matter of few weeks. And that few weeks was also because of the lockdowns and other things that logistics were not moving. Right. So now that said, now I'm going to touch few applications. Whatever I told you was in terms of how somebody could approach, a design in terms of prototyping it first, then making some tools, and then probably even manufacturing a few pieces, right? So aerospace, okay. These are applications that are, whatever application I'm going to touch right now, need not be doable on a low-end 3D printer. These are just to give you an idea of what is possible practically. Okay, whatever you're seeing right now is the rocket engine of the rocket called Dragon. I believe you all have been hearing of Elon Musk's SpaceX last few weeks or months. Okay, so whichever rocket went up to the ISS carrying humans, that rocket's engine is what you're seeing. And this is a 100% 3D printed rocket engine. So SpaceX or NASA, for the matter, does not mass manufacture rocket engines. They have to manufacture only a few units. And so for them, it makes complete sense to start manufacturing with 3D printing. Okay, so it's done in about 3 or 4 different parts put together. By doing 3D printing, they can eliminate all methods like, welding, etc. So the moment you eliminate welding and places wherever you join, you're actually making the parts more stronger. Okay, in any metallic structure, wherever the welding is done, that is the structurally most weakest point. So eliminating all those things, and in aerospace, those are of great significance. Okay, the engine is called Super Draco, and that's one application in aerospace. Another application I can talk to you about is the actual in-space application. Now, this is something that makes a lot of sense because in the space. So, for example, you all know that there is something called the ISS, International Space Station, which is a lab in the orbit, and humans live there to do some sort of zero gravity experiments. And every time something breaks, or if they require some new item, they'll have to wait until the next rocket goes from Houston, from Earth, to fulfill whatever requirements they have. Okay, and that's not a very viable thing always. So they got a 3D printer up there. It's made by a company called Made in Space. Now, Made in Space is a brand. Okay, they have a zero gravity specialized 3D printer where it uses vacuum to make sure the material is stuck to the ground and doesn't keep floating around, etc. So the idea is, if these astronauts require some special part, okay, some wrench, some screwdriver, some nut, or could be anything, they have to all they have to do is like convey that message to the engineers sitting down at NASA. They'll design those files, send it as an email to the machine directly, and the machine starts building it. Once it's ready, astronauts can take the part, use it wherever they have to, and at the end of it, if they are done with the part, they don't need the part anymore. They can even recycle the part back into its raw material format. That's like, what I'm trying to say is, you can manufacture or make whatever you want, wherever you want. Okay, space is the best example. Tomorrow, let's say we land on Mars, we don't really have to carry everything from here, but we'll have to try to make use of materials or silicon on the Mars to be able to build structures, houses, whatever. Okay, this is again something that we did. We did it in collaboration with students, actually student project. So NASA has a competition called Cubes in Space. Every year they launch the world's lightest satellites into space. So for the last 2 years, if you have heard of a satellite called Kalamsat and then Jai Hind INS, so these were 2018 and 19's world's lightest satellites, both won the competitions. These were 3D printed in our labs. It was again designed by students, and we helped them design, we helped them 3D print to make sure that they are very light. So one of them was done in nylon, the other one was done in carbon fiber. So the whole satellite's weight was only about 33 grams. Okay. Automobiles. So automobile industries is the key, is one of the key applicants for 3D printing, because there's a lot of aerodynamics involved. There's a lot of testing that can go through, and for every testing, they don't have to invest into injection molding or forming methods, but rather they can 3D print it, and then they can use those structures to test designs out, and then if it makes sense, they'll go into mass manufacturing. Apart from these, all sorts of concept designs. For example, if you take movies like the iRobot, you've heard Will Smith's iRobot from 2005. The car that Will Smith drives, the Audi RSQ, that was completely designed with a 3D printer. It's completely manufactured with a 3D printer. Similarly, if you're talking about a few James Bond movies, all the cars, the exotic cars that they come in, which were not out in the market yet. All the concept cars were actually 3D printed for the movies. So that's one example I could say. And again, in terms of automobiles, a lot of reverse engineering practice happens with automobiles. For example, somebody has come up with some formulas in terms of how the aerodynamics can be much better, and a competitive company just picks up that car. They reverse engineer the whole design and then try it out with 3D printing, and then they do all the mathematics in terms of how the aerodynamics can be. All this is doable even on simulation, but they generally go ahead and also test it out practically before they confirm their math. Okay, so that's one example where 3D printing can help with. So Hyperloop, I believe you've all heard Hyperloops. All Hyperloop concepts, Hyperloops is supposed to be transportation modes where you can move from one area to another area at speeds of 1,000 kilometers per hour in vacuum sealed chambers. So the point here is, all these concepts have to be tried out with 3D printing only. There's no other cheaper alternatives. Okay, even in India, there are Hyperloop teams doing these. Next is architecture. Over here, we can talk about two different things. One is scale models. So in the current techniques that are available, people generally used to make them out with thermocols, acrylics by cutting them and then putting them together, etc. Today we don't really have to do those. We just give the CAD design to a 3D printer. The 3D printer completes them, and then we have the finished design in a matter of few hours. The next possibility is in terms of these are all scale models. You can see there's a Burj Khalifa, there's a small apartment, there's a floor plan, there's a complete high-rise building. Okay, again, scale models of some real buildings. On the right, this is a monochromatic image, but you can see that there's a there's a bedroom, there's a bed, there's a kitchen, there's a refrigerator being shown. So these could be used commercially. Like for example, if I'm a builder and if I have not built the apartment yet, but I would like to sell it, the concept is ready on 2D. Probably you can show images, but rather, if the customer is willing to pay an advance of a few lakhs, why not give him a miniature model of his house as a memento, as a token? Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Again, this is the next part in terms of construction, which is called contour crafting. I believe you've heard of news where, China built a hospital for COVID-19 in a matter of 5 days or 10 days or something like that, right? So similarly, even before 1 or 2 years, you might have heard like a 10-story building built in about 1 week, 10 days. So they all use a method called prefab. So what it means is they have prefabricated blocks of buildings ready, which can be assembled like Lego kits, and then they'll be binded together. Okay. So what contour crafting does is it borrows some prefabrication principles, and it also borrows some 3D printing principles. So for example, in the picture on the left, you can see there are two robotic arms. Okay. One of them is depositing material for walls, etc. The other one is actually depositing, or rather picking and placing objects like these, like the rooftops, like the pillars, etc. So both these combined together is called contour crafting. So you make sure you use things like pillars ready-made, and then pillars, windows, pipes, all the plumbing, electrical works. Those are all prefabricated and kept ready of different dimensions. The robotic arm just picks and places them wherever required. On the other hand, the 3D printing arm keeps laying down walls and filling up wherever material is required, wherever concrete is required. So that's called contour crafting. So this is a new trend being picked up. For example, tomorrow if we land on the moon or the Mars, these are the robots that will be used for building habitats. We cannot really take some local coolie people to build constructions on Mars. It's not practically possible. So that's contour crafting. So whatever you see on the right, the yellow colored, yellowish orange, that's a building by a company called Apis Corp, which is a 3D printed mini house. They say that it lasts for about 170 years, and it costs only $10,000 to build something like that. It's a mini house, but still, And the one below it, it's in Dubai. It's called the Office of Future. They have been 3D printing buildings left and right for the Dubai Expo, but I'm not sure if it's happening because of COVID-19. Okay, let me go faster. Right now I have food. We can talk about one or two different applications. The ones on the right, it's just about building or just pushing out cream through nozzles and then coming up with random shapes. The one on the bottom could be probably pizza or some shapes, some snacks. Okay, McDonald's has been experimenting with concepts where kids come and order desserts, chocolates, or cakes when they're placing an order. By the time they finish their meal, that item would be 3D printed right in front of their eyes in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes, and then the dessert would be delivered on the table. So McDonald's has been experimenting with such concepts. What you see on the left is a very interesting concept. It's able to 3D print any recipe you want, okay, on the fly. So the key concept why food decomposes is because of moisture content in it. When you take out moisture content out of food, it never decomposes or it never spoils, it never rots. Okay. So what this guy did is he took about 3 different food items which are cooked but then dehydrated completely, and then you pass them on, or you store them as consumables, like powdered consumables, and these food particles are virtually never going to decompose. So basically you can put these on rockets which are going to Moon or Mars, and these can supply food for the long-term process. Now the application here comes in very interesting. The today's software is very sophisticated. So basically you write software to take X amount of some material, Y amount of some material, you mix them up, heat it on the fly, and then you can extrude food. Like on the way to Mars, you can have chicken margarita pizza. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So you have ingredients in powdered, non-decomposing format, and then you have software recipes. You club them both. You have whatever item you want for the long run. Okay, that's being worked on by NASA. Fashion. So this is something very interesting. If you look at shapes like these were impossible previously. Okay, you cannot really make shapes like this with any other manufacturing method. But with 3D printing, you can make complex structures like these, and you can club it with fashion. You can come up with very innovative designs, creative designs, etc. Entertainment. So you must know this from Thor Ragnarok. Hela's entire headdress was designed in parts and 3D printed. This had to be made with very light materials like carbon fiber, so that it's very lightweighted. And also, we don't want the actress, head to be tilted because of the weight, or it shouldn't pull it back. So center of mass, center of gravity, all those are calculated such that it's exactly fitting on her head. So again, this is a one-off thing, so you don't have to mass manufacture. So 3D printing makes perfect sense. This was a movie. This is a gun we did for a movie that was done in my office, my lab. So an entire sniper was 3D printed just for 1 or 2 scenes. Because the movie industry, they had low budgets and they didn't want to really buy a real gun out of few lakhs, or even they couldn't get a prop just like what they wanted. So they got this 3D printed, and then they painted it, and then they used it for the movie. Education, the biggest advantage in terms of education is something that I would call it as spatial thinking. Like, for example, my generation, or at least those who are in our 30s, the biggest technology that we were exposed to was computers when we were kids. Okay, in the 1990s or 1980s, we were exposed to computers. So if we are able to sit like this and talk today, it was because somewhere the Zoom's founder was exposed to computers, and then much later he had concepts which he could develop into a video conferencing tool like this, which we can use today. Imagine if such a thing could be done in the 3D space, in a physical space. Whatever computer innovation was is completely digital, but there's nothing like that for physical innovations. So that's where 3D printing can come and help, where the power of creating something can be exposed or can be opened up to kids at a very early age, and we open up the canvas is blank, and we opened up how all they can imagine and create objects on the fly. So with respect to education, it's mostly an open-ended exposure, that's all. And then kids are free to think of anything and then innovate using spatial thinking. Personalization, okay, this could take a long time to explain, but the idea is in the future you don't really have to buy things or items of size 8 or size 9 or size 10, be it shoes or be it spectacle frames, but rather somebody could just scan your head or scan your foot, and then you can order whatever items you want. Just like I want so and so shoe design, which is available already on the design on a computer, but I would like it to fit exactly my leg size. So bam, 3D scan it, get it manufactured, maybe 1 or 2 days, you could get it delivered. Prosthetics, this is a concept called Project Enable, where you can have mechanically integrated prosthetic arms, fracture casts. They're more stylish, they're more breathable. Okay, in dental, there's a lot of innovation going on with respect to dentals. So all braces, the metallic braces that we used to use previously, can be replaced with transparent or translucent braces, which are 3D printed. You can see it on the image on the right. So previously they were braces, and right now she's actually wearing transparent braces. They are expensive today, but it's just a matter of time where they become more and more affordable. This is a very interesting concept where an entire skull was completely reconstructed of a baby whose face was deformed. And so what the application over here is, no surgeons can perform a live surgery on a baby by cutting open the skull and joining it together and deciding the whole process on the fly live, right? So they 3D scanned her entire cranium, her skull, 3D printed, and did multiple rehearsals, practice surgeries. And once they were confident enough, they can perform surgery, they went ahead and did it. So the baby's name is called Violet. You can Google her name. Violet has a new face. That's the title. And you can come up with case studies on how it was done. It's very popular. So bioparts. So these are again another innovation where we can take body cells of humans, like ears, like skin, etc. You incubate them in a lab, and once there are n number of cells ready, you can push them into a 3D printer, and then you can create a live functional body part which can be put back onto the human. Okay, it's again another application where you can test medicines on top of such 3D printed organs rather than testing them on humans, right? So imagine if there was a lung 3D printed out of lung tissues, okay, and COVID-19 can be injected into those artificial lungs in a lab, and then all the drugs or vaccines can be used on the artificially created lung, which is functionally working. Okay, so that's an experiment where you're testing it on top of human tissues, but not really on alive humans. So that's something about bioprinting and drug delivery. I don't want to go very deep in that, but that's something that we've been working on. So last slide. So this is a process flow when it comes to 3D printing. You could either, let's say you want to get something 3D printed. The first point is you need a CAD design. Okay, for a CAD design, you can either scan an existing object or you can design something from scratch. And then you put it through a software where you configure all the settings, like what material, what temperature, what resolution, what density, and then give it to a machine. The machine finishes it off, and probably you'll need some post-processing, but you're good to go. That's all from my side for today. I had to rush a few slides because I was running out of time. So we'll open for questions and answers. I'm not able to see the chat for some reason.
Good afternoon, sir. It was a wonderful session. You were pretty elaborate and you told everything in details. Now, you definitely told all the things where 3D printing is useful and how it is gaining traction in time.
Yes, please.
A little bit more about your personal journey, like you said about Pidilite, how you gave the value output. Any other case studies where what you did through 3D printing? Because I'm sure as a stalwart and as a starter of this university, you must have came across a number of such cases. So would you...
See, one thing that we are proud of is during this COVID-19 situation, all the doctors were out of face shields, out of PPEs, personal protective equipments. And during the end of March, so we were looking at many people in Europe coming up with concepts of face shields, which were 3D printed. And then, they picked up off-the-shelf items from stationaries to build face shields and then give it out to doctors. So this is something, this movement we did very massively in India. As of today, there are at least like a few, tens of crores of face shields which are being used by doctors. But during the month of March, where we came up with something very rapidly, we tested multiple designs available for 3D printing, and we came up with, the entire, at least I was involved with the entire community, whoever had 3D printers in Chennai and in India. We 3D printed about thousands of such face shields, and we bought OHP sheets, and then we stapled them onto 3D printed parts which can be worn. And I have all the face shields back in another room, so I'll skip showing them. And then as it went forward, the next immediate thing is these were costing, about 50 rupees or something of that sort when we were 3D printing it. Immediately, we spoke to injection molding vendors. We went ahead and then got down the price to about literally half of it. Okay, and then as it went forward into a few millions of units, it fell down to a very negligible price point. So today, if in India there's so many doctors being protected, it's because of the 3D printing community that came up and made sure that they fulfilled the shortage of PPEs at some point of time. So that's something that you can even Google it.
We also got a mail from AICT like requesting all those with 3D printers for ventilator facilities. They wanted to try new things in ventilators also.
Ventilators also something that we did. We worked on. We worked with many universities actually, and we were sending out parts of 3D printed ventilator splitters where one ventilator can be used for multiple patients, etc.
When we talk of 3D printing, we are mostly focused on the hardware part. Whereas the software portion, I'm talking from student point of view, software portion is primarily which is of more importance because software is something, see, hardware definitely there have been improvements. Can you throw some light? Are we using artificial machine learning in software portion, and how is that transforming the entire journey of 3D printing?
There are two stages where software comes to play. One is the design aspect. Okay, the design is very key for someone to be able to 3D print something. And there are certain restrictions on, like for example, let's say you're taking sheet metals and you're bending them. You cannot create a 100% 90-degree bend. There has to be some radius. Similarly, there have to be certain conditions for 3D printing certain objects. You cannot 3D print something extremely thin out of a cheap 3D printer. You cannot 3D print something extremely strong like metals out of a cheap 3D printer. There are certain limitations where design softwares have been evolving to make sure that these concepts are inbuilt into, design software. That's one part. And number two is, let's say you've designed and most beginners make mistakes. For example, in the practical world, I cannot put one hand inside another hand. But in digital world, you can just move one object inside another object. But when the software for 3D printing is looking at it, it will get confused because there's one object inside another object. So AI is starting to come in these places where they can correct them up. Okay, that's one aspect. And number two is in terms of distributive manufacturing. So I did not go very deep into this particular slide that I was showing around personalization. So today everything, or at least for the last 2-3 decades, everything was manufactured in China. They have the infrastructure. It's called centralized manufacturing. Okay, and as it progresses, it's going to be more decentralized, and it's called distributive manufacturing. So what happens is there'll be micro factories around every city, which will start manufacturing parts for that particular city's consumption. Could be shoes, could be spectacle frames, could be anything. Okay, and that software has to become really important, where it customizes a pre-existing design to fit any size. And then there has to be blockchain coming into place, where every stage of automation that goes, there is some kind of encoding going into it, which is trackable, so that somebody does not hack in and modify designs on the fly, or modify a part being manufactured on the fly. So there's a lot of scope there. So the entire fourth industrial revolution is about combining concepts like IoT, concepts like AI, and physical concepts like 3D printing or automated manufacturing together. So software has to play a very key role in the fourth industrial revolution.
Thank you. Like from a student point of view, young graduates who are in second year or third year, which software should they work more on? Like AutoCAD is basically there, but MATLAB or anything which you suggest knowing would be accessible?
It depends on their industries. So if you're talking about a mechanical design concept, there's SolidWorks, there is CATIA, there is Fusion 360. Fusion 360 is the most popular choice right now. It's free for students. CATIA or SolidWorks, if you have commercial or educational licenses for the entire educational institution, maybe that will make sense. But Fusion 360 is something that everyone should definitely try. Okay, it's easy and it's picking up. But on a commercial level, like companies like us, we use SolidWorks to design our entire machines. Creo also makes sense. Okay, but again, looking at some other concepts like, let's say, graphical designers, like the movie industry or animation industry, they go for more softwares like Maya, 3ds Max, where it's more of character modeling. Like, for example, the skin, the beard, all these are not mechanical parts. They're not mechanical concepts. They have to be like creative concepts. So it's just a matter of picking what your industry is or what your area of interest is, and then there are a number of software.
Will it be possible for you to quickly just, whenever you have time, send a list of open source softwares which students can work upon, like which they can download and maybe, if it's possible?
So I can just say quickly, there's Blender, which is open source. You can try SketchUp. SketchUp is a free tool. There's a free and a paid tool, but free should be good enough. And then they can try Fusion 360. Fusion 360 is free for students. That's a great software. These three are the top list I can think of.
Thank you.
There's one more which involves coding. It's called OpenSCAD. Okay, I think I'm able to see the chat now. I see a few questions. We can make 3D products like software like Creo, CATIA, etc. Yes, we can. Rockets, every industry, aerospace. Somebody asked me, what are the most advanced things you can do with 3D printing? Mr. Sachin, so there's nothing like a limitation at all in terms of advanced. Whatever I've shown you things from as simple as fun objects like what I had, till rocket engines or till living cells, living tissues. There's absolutely no challenge in terms of what can be made with 3D printing. And with every method, if you looked at all my applications, there's absolutely no challenge. Or to put it in another way, it's like if there is a manufacturing technique already existing, 3D printing can come in and add more value to it. That's how we need to look at it as. 3D printing is more of an add-on technology and not really something totally new. The way that 3D printing works is like you create layer by layer. We have been building houses and walls like that for centuries or even thousands of years. We build brick by brick and then we keep adding layers. So it's an age-old technique and there are manufacturing methods available already. We're just clubbing them both with an automated digital process. That's all. Can we print money with a 3D printer? Yeah, you could, but you'll be put in prison. Sir, is Arduino or Raspberry Pi which is better for 3D printer? We are building a Delta Kinematics 3D printer. Could you please guide us for Nilesh Gupta? You will need both, okay, or you will need at least an Arduino based one. So it's like if you can pick up something like an Arduino Mega, a 2560 based controller, you can basically program your entire operating system or the firmware into that. And then probably you can use a Raspberry Pi to connect this whole system to the internet, cloud systems. That's how we have done it. Okay, but on the base you'll need something like an Arduino, which is a controller which will control the stepper motors, which will control the electronics, the temperature, all those things. A Raspberry Pi makes more sense on a processor level, where it helps to do advanced tasks like you can queue it, you can queue print, you can connect them. There's something called Octoprint that you can Octoprint or OctoPi. That's an OS which runs on the which NEMA model? NEMA model is NEMA 17. NEMA 17 for smaller size 3D printers. If you're talking about much larger, maybe NEMA 23. And with respect to Delta has some challenges, Nilesh. Unless you are very specific why you want a Delta, a Cartesian makes more sense. Delta, the calculations are very huge. Delta's advantage is speed, and number two, you can actually make very tall structures very easily. These two are your key, then you can go ahead with Delta. Otherwise, I've tried Delta, I've tried Cartesian. for me, I felt that Cartesian was way more advanced or way more better commercially. So it's totally your choice. Using MATLAB for design code, yeah, go ahead, use MATLAB. Any other questions? I'm not sure what time frame do we have for questions, Mr. Rehan?
So it depends on how your schedule, how free you are.
I can do for another 5-10 minutes. I don't have something
Okay.
very right now. If you have questions, them up. What are 3D printing filaments? What do I need them for? I have a filament right on my table. So this is, this is a filament over here. So this is the consumable. I'm not sure. This is a transparent material. Just put it on my face to have a look at it. So this is a consumable used for, this is a raw material for 3D printing. Like how in a normal 2D printer you have ink. So this one is similar for a method called FDM 3D print. Okay, FDM is the most cheapest or affordable form of 3D printing. So for that particular material, this is used. So again, if you take other technologies like SLA or DLP, the raw material used there is called resin. It's more in a liquidish format. In other forms like metals and all, they use metallic powders where they heat up the entire chamber of metallic powder. Like let's say we're talking about titanium. Titanium has a melting temperature of around 1200 degrees, I believe. So they'll heat the entire chamber to 1100 degrees, probably like 100 degrees lower. And then they'll use a very high powerful laser where the laser will, hit certain points of the powder and then increase the temperature by another 100 degrees. So from 1200 it goes to 1300, and over there the bonding of powder starts happening. So depending on what application or what process you choose, the consumable keeps changing. Next question is, what is the best 3D printing filament? Sachin, it keeps varying based on your application. So whatever I was showing you right now is called PET. PET is like the water bottle, like the PET bottles. These are more of food grade. They can be used for medical applications, etc. Whatever I'm showing here right now, this is PLA. PLA is polylactic acid. It's 80% biodegradable. So this is the most common material used, PLA. And there's another material which is popularly used called ABS. ABS is the common household plastic. Like whatever you look around, you can find them out of ABS. All industries generally use ABS, but ABS is difficult to 3D print. If you want to start off with the easiest, go with PLA. If you want certain things stronger, you can explore PET. And then there are n number of materials. There's flexible, there is carbon fiber infused, there's wood infusion, there's marble infusion. There's so many things. PLA is the most easiest material. We are designing a 3D printer that uses multiple filaments to create multiple color project. Does it make sense to develop such 3D printer? Interesting concept. These are called multiple extruder 3D printers. Over the past, we've manufactured multiple extruder 3D printers, but I felt that, wherever even we sold multiple extruder 3D printers, 99% of those customers were using only one extruder. Okay, so it doesn't make so much sense. It's actually slightly difficult to start using multiple extruders. One example I could say is if there are two extruders like this, so both have to be exactly on the same level, like 100%, not even 0.1 mm up or low, down. Okay, that's one. So if one extruder is printing material and the other is very idle, we don't want the idle one disturbing the already printed part. So that is something that is possible. So you can definitely experiment. So there are more concepts today where they can, take multiple filaments, they can cut and then stick it on the fly and then make it go through a single extruder. Okay, there is something called, you can explore a company called Mosaic Manufacturing. Okay, they have a product called Palette, which does this. They take about 4 filaments, they cut filaments on the fly with software, and then they join them together. So you will get multiple materials, multiple colors, but there's only one extruder. For 3D printer, iron materials are used or not? Vishal, materials are never a challenge. We've 3D printed titanium, we've 3D printed, stainless steel, we've 3D printed PEEK. So it's just about how the temperature or the process that needs to be varied. There is no challenge in terms of materials, and the costs will increase. For example, a machine that can melt this kind of plastic will cost you hardly about 20,000-30,000 upwards, but something that melts metals will actually cost you maybe 10-15 crores. So that would vary. Any other questions? So you can feel free to hit up any questions not related to what I just mentioned also. We used to do in-house, in-class trainings, but right now we just have a recorded session called a masterclass in 3D printing. It's there on the Learn tab on my company's website. We have a small paid course, but otherwise there are webinars which you can attend sometimes, if you're available. Those are free of cost. What should I know before buying a 3D printer? You should talk to my sales team. They'll help you out. So I did an entire recording on what should someone look into buying a 3D printer. Maybe you can find it on my website or on YouTube. You'll have to look for one or two primary things: is what size you want the machine to be, and are you looking for a hobby level, or are you looking for something very professional to offer a service to build a product? If it's to build a product or a prototyping service, you can buy a plug and play machine. If you're looking to build a 3D printer just for hobby's sake, for fun's sake, you can do a DIY 3D printer. Make sure you look for things like what is the maximum temperature that it can do. For example, there are two classes of hot ends used in 3D printers. One of them goes up to 250 degrees. The other one goes up to 200 degrees. The one that can do 250 degrees has very limited number of materials, but the one that can do 300 degrees can do all things like carbon fiber, nylon, all those things. It's a matter of 1,000-2,000 rupees difference between both those. So that is something I need to look at. Thank you, Nilesh. Anyone else? We'll take another 2-3 questions. Okay, everyone's saying thank you. Thank you for attending. If I wish to run a startup in 3D printing, which field I need to provide services at early stage? Please tell me what are the future updates in 3D printer mechanism. Okay, I'll answer both these. Vishal, in terms of 3D printer mechanism, there are only 2 or 3 possibilities. There's a delta, there is a Cartesian, and then there is something which is, like a robotic arm kind of structure. I don't know what you call it, SCARA type. Okay, there are very few mechanisms possible, which the objective is with respect to the bed, the nozzle has to move in 3 dimensions. So whatever mechanism you can imagine, that's all you can. And to answer the other question, 3D printing services. So whoever comes to me with the idea of starting up a business in 3D printing, I tell one primary thing that, it's not about the technology to run a business. It's more about your ability to get your customers. Okay. So I would say having run a company for about 7 years now. So, the technical aspects are only 15% of running a company. The remaining 80-85% is your ability to communicate to your clients and get orders. If you have some kind of customer base already for some particular industry, like let's say dental or let's say automobiles, okay, you go talk to those, get orders first. And once you have n number of orders, you don't even have to invest into buying a 3D printer first. First do this, and you can approach some 3D printing company like us, get these orders fulfilled first, and let's see if you're able to make some profit. If yes, then maybe you can rent a 3D printer. You can start offering services in-house, and if you're still seeing profitability, then you can go ahead and buy a 3D printer. That makes more sense than investing into machines than not being able to get orders. Minimal wall thickness 0.4 mm. The nozzle diameter, like for example, if you have a nozzle, assuming that this is a nozzle, this is a 3D printer head, there's a nozzle tip out of which the consumable comes out. So that one is 0.4 mm by default. You can go down to 0.25 on FDM. So if you're taking about other technologies, you can go down even much lower, like nano printing and all those. But the common ones we're talking about 0.4 mm. Oh yeah, somebody has shared my Instagram page. You can follow us on Instagram. Thank you, Nilesh.
Ayushi madam?
हाँ सर, मेरी वॉइस क्लियर है सर?
Audible, you are audible.
Good afternoon, all of you. On the behalf of Vision Group of Institutions, I would like to thank Mr. Surendra Nath Reddy for providing us such a wonderful session on very trending technology, 3D printing. Thank you so much, sir, for giving your precious time.